Hey guys, it's Ann Yorks from the Flower Box, and I have a new holiday cookie tutorial for you. One of my favorite holiday traditions is picking out our family Christmas tree. So this set is all about the Farmhouse Christmas. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a Christmas truck with tree cookie, a Farmhouse Milk Can, a Farm Fresh tree cookie sign, a really cute but totally doable wreath, and finally, a really awesome barn with lots of texture and a few Christmas lights. This set has lots of details, but I've planned a simple color palette to make it super easy to recreate these cookies. Plus, I've also created a kit to go with them. You can find that on flowerbox.com, and it has the essential cutters and stencils to make the Farmhouse Cookie Set. I also provide a color planning guide and a cookie timeline, plus some suggestions on yield and how many cookies you can make. But that's enough chit chat. Let's cookie it up. The feature cookie of this set is this Christmas truck with tree. And anytime I'm making a set of cookies, I like to start with the most complex cookie so that those icing areas can dry while I'm working on some of the easier cookies. To get this cookie started, I'm just using a coupler and a yellow food doodler to outline some wheels. That'll just make making those circles a little bit easier. Once I pipe the black outline, I'm ready to jump to the red truck outline. I have tip number 2 on my icing bag as I outline the wheels, the truck, and the tree. Once I have each section outlined, I'm ready to start flooding in. I'll add a circle of black flood to the tires, and then I'll fill in the center white. You'll see why in a little bit. Then I add a white window to the truck. Finally, I'm going to fill in the green tree with flood icing. Notice how I have alternating areas flooded so that we can see a beautiful distinction between each of the colors. Once these areas have a chance to dry, I'm ready to flood in the red truck. And I'm just going to be really generous with that flood icing as I fill in the truck, just to give it a nice full and clean look to this main section of the cookie. Let that red icing dry for a couple of hours, because if you want to trace the circle onto the truck like I did to add a wreath, you really want to have that base icing fully set up before you put any pressure on with the tip of a food marker. But it does make this little wreath so much easier if you have a little bit of a guide. Notice I'm just piping small little teardrops of green icing around the circle to create this really cute wreath on the side of the truck. Now I'm ready to add some snow onto the Christmas tree. I still have tip number 2 on my white icing bag, and I'm going to just outline a couple of snow areas. There's no magical way to do this, just wiggly lines does the trick. And I'll add a few in the body of the tree just to give the illusion that there are some branches that have snow resting on them as well. Now I'm going to flood in those areas with a little bit of white flood icing. Time to add the fenders. I want to give my Christmas truck a little bit of a vintage vibe. So I'm piping a fender on the front and back of the truck. Notice the shape that I'm using. I really pull that icing up, down to the corner of the truck just to give it a big rounded look and make it look like an antique truck. Then I'll fill those areas in with red flood icing. With a few piped lines, this truck is really coming to life. I just need to add the bumpers using some gray icing. The final touch, a few berries on the wreath. Don't forget to add some little mini trees on the hubcaps. This is the kind of truck I would drive at Christmas time. This cookie is just so cute and will be the hit of your cookie exchange. Now let's take a look at a new cookie cutter design. This is the Farmhouse Milk Can, and we're going to be stenciling on this cookie. So as I'm outlining and flooding, I just want to make sure that I'm extra generous with my flood. I want a nice flat surface on the cookie anytime I'm using a stencil. And if you don't add enough icing, sometimes you can see some hills and valleys once the icing dries, and I really don't want that. So notice how full that icing area is. To even out between icing areas, you can always use your scribe just to wiggle and tap icing into place. Now it's important to let that base icing dry for about 6 hours before we stencil on it. So I have a nice dry base, and I have my Home for the Holidays stencil. I'm using stiff black icing, and I'm just going to spread it generously across the stencil. Gently peel back that stencil, and you have such a cute and easy way to send a holiday greeting. This cookie's almost done. I've switched my tip on the red piping icing to tip number 3. I just want a wider tip as I create this bow. I'm using stronger hand pressure in those thick areas, and as I pull out those pretty ribbons on the bow, I really ease off the hand pressure to get those nice thin areas. A few gray dot details, and this cookie is ready for the platter. Now let's take a look at this Farm Fresh Christmas tree sign. I love this cookie. Not only is the stencil super cute, this is the easiest cookie to do in this set. I'm going to outline the cookie with white piping icing. Again, flood generously with my white icing. We want a nice flat surface when we're getting ready to stencil. Allow that icing to dry for about 6 hours, and then you're going to use your green piping icing, squeeze it onto your scraper, get your stencil in place, and now it's time to spread the icing across. Make sure that icing covers the stencil completely. If you put on too much, take an extra swipe to remove the excess, and then peel back gently to reveal the stenciled area. That looks awesome. I'm adding a border to this cookie just to complete the sign, but I don't want that border to overwhelm the text from the stencil, and so I've sized my black down to a tip number 1 just to add a thin line. Let's take a look at this cute wreath. Again, I'm using my yellow food marker and my coupler to help me with those circles. They're always the trickiest to pipe. Once I have my circle on, I have my red piping icing, and I'll outline the bow area. Now I'm ready to outline the wreath in white. Let's flood the wreath in first, generously, with the white, and allow that area to dry. Then we'll flood in each section of the bow. This is a small icing area, so you can just allow 30 minutes to dry before you come back in to flood the center. Just a little bit of dry time will help keep the definition between those icing areas. Now get those flood bags ready. We're going to add lots of little dots to the wreath, big ones and little ones, and add lots of pops of color. This is fun and easy to do, and it just really creates a cute design and texture to go with these cookies. The color palette of this set really is quite simple. White, red, green, black, and gray. I'm keeping it simple for the holiday of 2020. Okay, let's wrap this tutorial up with this cute Christmas barn. First, I'm going to outline the roof in black. Now it's time to flood in the white barn. I'm going to flood the entire section white. Let that area dry for about an hour, and then it's time to flood in the black roof. Again, another quick dry, and we're ready to add the details. I've put a tip number 47, this is a basket weave tip, on my gray icing, and it has lots of little grooves on the edge of the tip on one side, and it kind of looks like a wood grain, so I love this quick detail for piping the barn door. If you need to clean up any of those areas, just get your scribe. While the icing is still wet, you can tap icing into place. I like adding an outline to the roof area. It just cleans up those two sections of icing. Now I'm going to pipe some gray lines just for the panels on the barn. I've sized my tip down to a tip number 1 to keep those details nice and thin. Let's add another cute wreath. This time I'm just going to add dots of icing in a circle. It's easier to add just dots of icing since we're working on top of that chunky gray icing. And then a few pops of red for berries. This Christmas barn is not complete without a strand of Christmas lights. Again, I have a tip number 1 on my black icing, and I'm piping scallops across the roof line so I can add some Christmas lights. I add the dots of icing in a 2-1 pattern. That way I keep the pattern alternating, red, green, red, green. That is a cute cookie, and it goes perfectly with the rest of this set. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching this holiday cookie tutorial. If you'd like to recreate these cookies, you can find the kit on flowerbox.com. Don't forget to tag at the Flowerbox Shop on social media. I would love to see your take on this cute farmhouse cookie set. And as always, happy decorating!